This is the second edition of the Laka Law 2 podcast, and I'm your host, Larry Wiggs. This podcast is an extension of my Laka Law 2 blog site that I created and have continually updated since 2010. You may visit my site to find photos and read stories at lacalaw2.com. If you recall from the first episode, this podcast is designed for me to share stories about my encounters with the numbers 10 and 9. These numbers hold significance for me because they remind me of my birth date. For example, when I see the numbers 10 and 9, I don't just see random numbers, but I see a sign, an omen, if you will, and I ascribe positive meaning to the encounter, and then I go on with my day. Today's story is about my encounter with the numbers 10 and 9, and it takes place in Havana, Cuba. Last year, 2017, I visited the communist island nation twice. I'm an American, therefore I had to follow the rules set forth by our State Department. Although, recently President Trump has changed the guidelines for travel to Cuba, I was lucky enough to make my trip there, and my travel fell within our government's guidelines. Now that said, I had a wonderful time, and I would encourage other Americans to visit and explore Cuba. Back to my story. I was staying in a casa particular, which is the equivalent of a bed and breakfast in Havana. The room I was in had only one window, and it opened not outside, but it opened into the atrium of the casa. Now, I felt slightly claustrophobic, but it didn't bother me until this particular night when I decided to read the travel journals written by Ernesto Che Guevara entitled The Motorcycle Diaries, or Diarios de Motocicleta in Spanish. While reading the first few pages, I discovered a fact that I found unsettling. As I mention often, my birthday is on October 9th. Well, as I began reading the Motorcycle Diaries, I read that Ernesto Che Guevara died on October 9th. That little fact made the hair on my back stand at attention. For starters, I was in Cuba, the country where Che helped lead the Cuban Revolution alongside Fidel Castro. Next, I was reading his words. Finally, I discovered that he died on the same day that I was born. Well, I put the book down and I wanted to get out of that room. To make things worse for me, it was nearly midnight and everyone in the casa was asleep. And if I were to go out on the streets, no one would be there. You're listening to the Laka Law 2 podcast, and I'm Larry Wiggs. You've just listened to the second of a number of encounters I have had with the numbers 10 and 9. I hope you enjoyed this tale and look forward to hearing others. Believe me, there are many, some more bizarre than others. Thank you for listening.